Welcome to today's episode of Don't Waste the Chaos, where we are diving into strategies and tips to help small business owners thrive. I'm your host, Kerri Roberts, and in today's episode, we're tackling a common challenge faced by businesses of all sizes, and that's high employee turnover. Employee turnover can be a significant headache for your businesses. It impacts productivity, morale, and ultimately the bottom line. But fear not, because today we're exploring practical strategies to address and reduce employee turnover effectively. Now let's start by identifying the root causes behind employee turnover. You can do this by conducting exit interviews, surveys, and having one-on-one discussions with departing employees. By doing these, that can provide valuable insights into the employee's reasons for leaving. But let's back up a little bit. We don't want to wait until they leave. So what are the processes that we can do prior to or building up to them leaving that can help you gain insights? The first one, I would say, are one-on-one discussions between employees and managers. So a lot of organizations are trying to reduce meetings, and I totally get that. This can be morning stand-ups. This can be a quick call, a check-in. If you're in person, a drop by the office. But if we don't have regular occurrences where the manager or team lead is meeting with the employee, it's so easy for us to all be in that grind. And before we know it, 3 weeks have went by, a month has went by, and we haven't checked in on our employee. That individual might be stewing on something. They might have a barrier or an obstacle that they're facing, and they're not sharing that with anyone. And maybe they feel like no one cares because no one's checking in on them. So being intentional about those one-on-one discussions is important. I worked at an organization years ago that was so structured that sometimes it was obnoxious, but I know why they did it, because without intentionality, it doesn't happen. That organization required leaders, especially I was a leader in HR at the time, to do something called management by walking around, MBWA, and we put it on our calendar. We didn't tell employees what we were doing, but we would block off 30 minutes once a week to do MBWA. Now, ideally, you would do this more than once a week because you're going to hit different employees at different times. Really, that the senior leader of that organization wanted it to happen every day, but I can say I committed to doing it every single week. And sometimes it would get pushed until Friday, which is crazy. It's 30 minutes. Plus, it's good for you to get up and walk around. Now, if you're in a remote environment, just setting that on your calendar and having intentional check-ins if you don't already have one-on-one meetings scheduled. So what do you do by management by walking around, which, by the way, is a Peter Drucker concept. And if you've not read Peter Drucker, he is the godfather of modern management. But anyway, during this time, you just literally get up from your desk and move around, make eye contact with people, ask them how they're doing. Now, I'm not talking about if you've got an employee that's on the phone, standing there with your arms crossed, making eye contact with them, making it uncomfortable. I mean, seeing who's available to have a conversation, ask them how their week's going. If there's anything that you can do to help, maybe it's just relational time. Hey, how's your daughter doing in her cheer competitions or whatever? Getting to know the people a little bit better. You're going to have to build trust if you don't already have it. Relationally first. Once that trust is built, then they might open up to you about things that are hard at work or maybe relational issues that they're having. It's a process, and it's a process that's worthwhile. Secondary to that, for one-on-one discussions might be stay interviews with human resources or your office manager if you don't have HR. So this would be an intentional listing of questions, trying to keep it casual, but there's an intentional list of questions. I'd say probably 8 to 10 questions, and I can give you some ideas on those. 8 to 10 questions that you ask every single employee, and set these up to do 2 of these a month, 5 of these a month, depending on how many individuals you have in your organization and or HR department. But having these intentional stay interviews, and then going through the responses, not just collecting the information, and then going through the responses, sharing it appropriately, creating action plans to address certain issues. These are gold nuggets. When I joined an organization, it was around 2018, I was trying to check the pulse of the organization. And so I did stay interviews with every single employee. Now that was daunting. This organization had almost 50 employees, but it was important to me. And I had a standardized set of questions I was asking. And it's things like, tell me what it is that you do during the week. What's hard for you? What's leadership look like? How would you describe the culture? What suggestions would you give us on our employee benefits? It's just some general questions that I asked. I said, I'm going to take down your responses, and I'm just doing this so I can understand how we're doing as an organization and maybe future direction that we want to set. Now, you could do this on SurveyMonkey as well, but you need to understand the culture of your organization, or have somebody like me as an HR consultant come in and help you understand what the culture is in your organization. Because if trust is low, or if you've done surveys in the past and not done anything with that information, your employees are probably not going to give you feedback over a survey, or they're not going to be candid potentially, or they're not going to take the time to do it. So anyway, these one-on-one stay interviews are going to be much more advantageous on collecting information. But let's step into the next one, and that is employee engagement surveys. So if you have a culture where you have shown that you value feedback, or you're wanting to create a culture where you value feedback, an annual employee engagement survey is great. Now, if you've ever applied for, let's say, an award by Gallup, like Great Place to Work or things like that, that's a great employee engagement survey. You don't need to do a separate one. But if you're not regularly applying for Great Place to Work style type awards, and you don't do any other kind of engagement survey, I would recommend as a baseline doing an annual employee engagement survey. You can do these internally. I recommend having an external person do them, because that way they feel like they're giving their information to a third party site. There needs to be clear communication around this. Like, how will the feedback be utilized? Will it be whitewashed, meaning it will be removed if there's any kind of personal designation in the comments? If themes will be identified, what you're going to do with the data after it's been given. And then you need to actually show them that you're doing something with the data. If my organization comes on and does an employee engagement survey for a client, then what we do is we draft all the communication. We want the senior leader to send the communication out. Unless they're uncomfortable, then I'm happy to send it out to their employee population. But usually I would have the senior leader send it out, or maybe the head of HR, or the office manager, whoever's designated. Then we conduct the survey. And in the communication that I draft, I essentially say, like, a third party's conducting this. They are going to obtain the survey feedback, and then they're going to be giving it to our leadership team. And then we're going to share with you as a leadership team what we learned, what the key themes are. Or what I've done for a client in the past is I've come on site to a team retreat and said, like, okay, folks, here's what we learned, and here's what we're doing with your leadership team. Action plans that we've put in place. Here's the way they're going to address things over the next 12 months. You don't have to fix everything right away. And some of it is just FYI on the culture. Not all of it is negative or constructive feedback. It also gives you a great understanding of, like, what people like about the organization, what you should not be changing, what sets you apart, maybe what your value proposition is as an employer, and things that you could be sharing on your website, on and on and on. Great tool. If you're not doing employee engagement surveys, do them. I'm happy to help. Okay, next one is exit interviews. Now, this is at the back end of the process. So the person's already said they're leaving. Once a person gives notice, and by the way, if they're giving notice, I'd recommend in your handbook that you put that you require that they give notice in exchange for a payout of their PTO, blah, blah, blah. We can talk policies. But anyway, they've said they're leaving. Hopefully they've given a 2-week notice if they're an entry-level employee, longer if they're a manager or a senior leader level. Then a person in HR or an office manager, kind of a neutral person in the organization, not necessarily that person's direct supervisor, is going to conduct an exit interview. Now, again, just like those stay interviews, I'd recommend having a standardized set of questions. It's probably going to expand beyond these questions, but I'd have a standardized set of questions that are asked. And I would say, hey, we want to get some feedback from you so we can improve. It's nothing more than that. This is not a witch hunt. This is just trying to collect feedback so that way we can do better as an organization. And so you send them out a calendar invite. You do it one-on-one, whether it's going to be over Zoom if it's a remote employee, or in person. Then you collect that information, whitewash it if need be, and then discuss it with leadership, that person's direct supervisor, giving constructive feedback, talking about things that can be addressed, making decisions based off of it. Now, I have seen organizations, every time someone leaves, blame the person who's leaving. Well, we don't want them here anyway if they're not bought in or they never were a fit. Okay, folks, there is always something to be learned from feedback. Now, I get it. You can take some people's feedback with a grain of salt if they're overly disgruntled. Why are they so disgruntled? Why did you have such a disgruntled employee that you weren't either addressing issues with, coaching them up or coaching them out, addressing what the problems were? Like, don't wait until a person leaves and then just shrug it off and say, well, we didn't want them here anyway. Why did you have somebody working at your organization that you didn't want there anyway? So there's a lot to that. But if we're conducting the exit interview, we want to collect the information. We want to compile it so we can look at trends over time, but we want to do something with that information to improve. So common factors of why people are leaving you may include lack of career growth opportunities, poor management, inadequate compensation, work-life balance issues. So how do you address each of these issues to make them a non-issue moving forward? Let's talk through these a little bit. Career growth opportunities. If you don't have clear job descriptions and career ladders or career paths showing them where they can go, if you don't have a gap analysis essentially of, okay, you're a processor, but you want to be an account manager, and here are the things that you'd have to do over this period of time to get to the next level, if that's your goal, and here's how we as an organization are going to help you get to that level, that's a problem. A lot of people, not every single person, some folks are worker bees and they want to sit in their role forever. That is fabulous, but that is not common. Okay. So most individuals want career growth opportunities, whether they reach those or not. They want something that they can be striving to other than just like clocking in and out and grinding every single day on the same exact thing. So let's talk about how to get these career growth opportunities with you. This is very important. If you're not talking to a consultant about it, talk about it internally. Talk about it with, like, let's say I'm a team lead of processors. There's a team lead of account managers. Those two team leads should get together and say, okay, so processors, let's talk about our processors. What do they need to get to the next level? Let's map that out. And then let's sit down with our processors and let them know how they get there. Ideally, you're sitting down with them one-on-one and saying, do you have a desire to get to the next level? If you do, here's your specific gap analysis of where you're performing today, where you need to go, what we can do to help you, what you need to do to help yourself. Mapping that out is going to be huge. Okay, next one is inadequate compensation. So a couple of things. From a recruitment perspective, a lot of states are going toward requiring posting pay or pay bands for the positions. I couldn't agree with this more. It blows my mind how many organizations want to keep that under wraps. Like, you're wasting their time and yours in the interview process by not being forthcoming. And they can't trust that every organization is paying similarly. And I understand, because I've been in HR for 20 years. Yes, it's going to, match experience, education, so on and so forth. But still, if there's a band, you know what it is. If you don't, you should. You know what that is. You need to populate that in your postings and have it out there. So let's say you have paid people based off of what they've said they wanted to be paid, or if a person said they were going to leave, you threw them some more money, your pay is all over the place. I would recommend having a consultant come in and do a compensation data study. I have a partnership with a third-party vendor that has payroll data from all over the world, but it can be drilled down demographically. They've also got pay information based off of tenure, revenue of the organization, training, licensure, and all of that. So essentially, when I come alongside a client, I'm taking every single job title, I'm putting that job title in my third-party vendor software. I'm making sure that the job descriptions are similar. So we're talking about apples to apples if you have unique titles. And then I'm sorting that by the revenue of your organization and how long that person's been in the role. And then I'm spitting out pay bands to you. What 10th percentile of the band is, 25th, mean, 75th, 90th. And then I'm taking all of your current people's compensation and plotting them and essentially saying it looks like you pay in the 25th percentile of a pay band for this role, or you pay at the 75th, or, like I'm talking to you about your pay philosophy, getting everyone to similar areas. And you might say, well, Kerri, they're paid less because they have less training. Oh, cool. Have you ever talked to them about that? Have you told them what you're going to do to help them get to where they're trying to go? Or have you talked to them about their deficiencies and why they're not paid where everyone else is at and what they can do to address that? Just having a philosophy, folks, being intentional. Just like your culture, everything goes to a default unless you're intentional. And then you have your default is what it is. And so getting to that adequate compensation, sharing what your pay philosophy is and where a person lands and how they can get to where they're trying to go is huge. And it will build trust through transparency. Lastly is work-life balance issues. A lot of things that are falling into this now are remote and hybrid work, or the demands put on the role. These are conversations to have with your people. This is what your culture is, whether, like I said, it's intentional or by default, addressing any potential balance issues. I don't really like the whole phrase work-life balance. I'm more of an integration type of person. I'm more of you're the same person inside and outside the workplace. But regardless, sometimes this is what gets cited when people are leaving, whether their supervisor had too high of expectations, on and on and on. So these are some of the reasons that usually get cited on an exit interview. So let's talk about next what we can do, prioritizing employee engagement. So engaged employees are more likely to stay with your company and contribute positively to its success. I've put out several emails to my email group. If you're not on my email list, you should be, because I put out a ton of stats and data and how you can impact that in my email list. So let us know if you want to sign up, but you will increase your productivity with your employees if they are engaged. So you need to care about if they're engaged and satisfied. You can invest in initiatives like regular feedback sessions, town halls, recognition programs, team building opportunities, professional development to boost employee engagement and foster that positive work culture. Offering competitive compensation and benefits is another essential strategy like we talked about for reducing turnover. We need to research industry standards and adjust your compensation structure accordingly to ensure that you remain competitive. It's out, even in addition to like the typical compensation. If you're not doing total reward statements to show your folks, okay, so sure, we pay you $57,000 a year, but here's what we pay in taxes. Here's what we pay in the employer portion of your medical, your dental, your vision. Here's reward and recognition dollars. Like if you have a number of employee events, we can take the overall spend that you do in employee events over the year, divide it by how many employees that you have, and say, annually we spend about $1,000 on employee reward and recognition events. The list goes on and on. Here's what we contribute in your 401k if you have one. Giving them a look at their total reward statement is huge, because $57,000 quickly becomes $75,000 in what an employer is paying for an employee. Outside of compensation, we're talking about flexible work arrangements. Like I said, your health insurance, your retirement plans, paid time off, all of those things enhance employee satisfaction and loyalty. Let's jump more into growth and development. So to help employees expand their skills and progress in their career, we talked about those career ladders and how we're needing to show our employees, one, how they attach to the overall company goals and the purpose and the mission, two, how they can get to the next level. You can offer training, upskilling, career advancement opportunities, and create individual development plans to support your employees' professional growth. So there's a lot of different ways to get here. You don't have to do it all. I am riffing on a lot of these things and listing off a number of different modalities that I see get done from an HR perspective. Start with one. Start with one of these areas and let your employees know. Then you're going to go to two. Then you're going to go to three. But don't just like throw these new processes up on the wall and then not be consistent. You don't have to roll out a new procedure every single month. Just start somewhere and be consistent. Show your employees that you care and that you're committed to this, and you will see your turnover drop. Okay, next is effective recruitment and onboarding processes. These are crucial for setting the stage for employee success and retention. I want to talk about onboarding here for a minute. It's interesting to me how we'll set up a recruitment process. We'll talk about recruitment here in a minute too, but we'll set up a recruitment process and it may be fairly rigorous. It may not. Either way, you get them in the organization and then they just like plop in and you don't have any formalized structure. I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and it's a small business owner, 8 employees, so pretty small. And she was saying, well, we don't really have like an onboarding per se because we're so small. And I was like, hold up, let me create a PowerPoint deck for you in Canva, by the way, which I'm a huge proponent of. It makes you look way cooler than you really are. But let's put a deck together so you can just run through it with the employee. Even something as simple as that, a 1 hour quick overview of here's our mission, here's our vision, here's our values, here's something about the owner of the organization, here's our team structure and setup, here's the organizational chart, here are our employee benefits, here's an intro into our HR payroll technology, here is what our culture looks like. Here's what we want our culture to look like. Here's what it takes to succeed at our organization. Every single employee, even if you're an 8-person organization, needs this information. Either this is stuff that they're going to pick up on their own, again, by default, or you're going to be intentional telling them your expectation. If you have a professional work environment, treat them with professionalism on their very first day. Employees need to know that you're prepared for them and you're setting the stage for them for success. Even if you're just printing off a little piece of paper and giving it to them or sending them a PDF that says like, okay, your first day, you're going to have your culture orientation with the office manager or maybe even with the owner. You're going to do a one-on-one with the owner and every manager in the organization. These are 30-minute sessions. They're not that big of a deal, but here's when you can expect to do them. You're going to do on-the-job training with this person, this person, this person. During those times, you're going to be covering these certain aspects of your role. It doesn't have to be so nailed down that there can't be fluidity in the process. You just need to show them that you thought of them before they got there, that you are an organized company, and that you are ready to set them up for success. You guys, this will go so far with their retention. If a person leaves in the first 90 days, this is a hiring and onboarding issue. If they leave, let's say between 90 days and a year, usually it's a supervisory issue. Past a year, it's a culture issue, likely organizational growth and lack of training opportunities and career growth. Now, let's go back to recruitment. So your recruitment process is huge as well. I have partners in this space that can help you. I talk a lot about Elevate and Producify X. Those are both strategic partnerships of mine that I have that I highly recommend getting your recruitment strategy right, whether you are hiring a recruiter or you're hiring a firm to help you with your recruitment strategy. Both of these are going to reap tons of benefits for you in the long term. I highly recommend this. Also, we want to make it as easy as possible for a person to get through the recruitment strategy. But when I say easy, I don't mean simple per se. So what I love when you are posting a role, what I love is for you to require that they submit their resume. Maybe I recommend a questionnaire with some basic questions about their abilities to do the role. And I love a quick video. They're required to do a 30-second to 2-minute video just so you can see and get a vibe for the person. Now, having those 3 to 4 different steps, is that going to make less people apply? Maybe, sure. But those are probably the people that just want to click the easy button and they're replying to 45 different places. Is that the person that you want? You want the person who is like, this is an organization I align with. This is a role that I'm qualified for, or that is a stretch goal for me that I really, really want. I'm going to take the time to invest in this process. So setting up your recruitment and onboarding processes are crucial here. This comprehensive onboarding and training program is going to help a new employee acclimate into their role once they're in. And again, they're going to feel like you're professional, you're prepared, and that's going to force them to bring their best to the table as well. Next is fostering strong leadership and management. This is key to reducing turnover. So I talked about those first 90 days are likely because you had a weak recruitment or a weak onboarding process. After that 90 days, we're talking about a leadership program. You're needing one if you're seeing turnover in that time span. You're also needing one, by the way, because your leaders are going to leave if they don't have career development opportunities. So providing leadership training and support to help managers develop the skills they need to motivate them, to motivate their teams, to inspire their teams effectively. This is all key. We're going to encourage open communication regular check-ins, and feedback between managers and employees to address concerns and foster positive working relationships. So we're going to invest in our managers, but then we're also going to have our managers investing in our people. So it's this constant positive cycle. Okay, next, we're monitoring and measuring our progress. So a lot of you probably don't have HR metrics, or you may, and they're inside your HR payroll system. And if you don't have an HR payroll system, just a reminder, you can get these at very modest rates for organizations of any size. Reach out and I'm happy to walk through that with you. But we're wanting to monitor and measure our progress. The easiest way to do that is if our data is in an HR payroll system, but you can still manage this manually as well if you're still working between, like, let's say Excel and QuickBooks. You need to track your turnover rates. You need to track this exit interview data. You need to track your employee engagement survey data and gauge the effectiveness of your retention efforts. So if we put some of these things in place, we don't want to just put the processes in place and then not track our metrics on the other side of it. We want to be tracking. So use this information to refine your strategies and make data-driven decisions to reduce turnover over time. So there you have it. Those were some practical strategies to help you as a small business owner, mid-sized business owner, to address and reduce high turnover. Remember, investing in your employee satisfaction and well-being is an investment in the long-term success of your business. Let's not waste the chaos in this area. Let's get those turnover rates down and productivity up.